China and India, once rivals, forge a defense pact that threatens to overturn the balance of power in Asia. Two giants representing over a third of humanity could rewrite the strategic future of the world, challenging the very foundation of America's Indo-Pacific dominance. Their convergence would fuse massive economic weight with staggering military potential, creating a bloc strong enough to unsettle Washington's alliances and shake U.S. primacy in its most vital theater. But even as their border scars run deep, growing multipolar tensions and great power realignments raise a provocative question. What if Beijing and New Delhi chose cooperation over conflict? Such an alliance, unlikely but not impossible, would send shockwaves through global geopolitics, force the U.S. into defensive containment, and reshape the world order as we know it. To understand the stakes, one must first grasp the raw scale behind this hypothetical partnership. Together, China and India represent more than one-third of humanity and nearly a quarter of global GDP in purchasing power terms. Militarily, their combined strength would be staggering. Millions of active and reserve troops, vast armored formations, and air forces that already dominate the Asian landmass. Add to this the already accelerating economic interdependence between the two countries. Trade has continued to surge even amid border tensions, and it becomes clear that the foundations for partnership, at least in theory, do exist. Henry Kissinger once remarked that the United States cannot dominate Asia, it can only balance it. A true China-India defense alignment would tilt that balance beyond Washington's reach. Of course, today China and India remain adversarial and deeply distrustful. Deadly clashes along the line of actual control, particularly the 2020 Galwan Valley incident, still shape public sentiment and military posture. Yet, beneath the hostility lies a strange duality. The two nations remain tied together through BRICS and the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, forums that allow dialogue even amid tension. Indian leaders still insist on strategic autonomy, refusing to be bound by Western alliances. China, for its part, has quietly encouraged Asian-led security structures that diminish U.S. influence. Both nations insist, in their own ways, that they reject bloc politics and Western dominance. In a world defined by great power rivalry, stranger alignments have emerged from thinner logic. If Beijing and New Delhi ever decided to pursue a defense pact, it would almost certainly begin with pragmatic, incremental cooperation rather than sweeping declarations. Intelligence sharing, coordinated cybersecurity efforts, technology transfers, limited naval cooperation, or hotline-based crisis management are all conceivable starting points. Economically, the logic would be even stronger. China brings unmatched manufacturing capacity and missile and cyber capabilities. India brings logistical reach, a massive military manpower pool, English-speaking command networks, and diplomatic influence across the global south. Together, they could operate as a two-theater power, China dominating East Asia and the Pacific, India projecting influence across the Indian Ocean and West Asia. The shockwaves across Asia would be immediate. ASEAN nations would be thrust into neutrality, Pakistan would be strategically sidelined, and Russia would quietly welcome the emergence of a non-Western security architecture. The question then becomes, could the United States contain such a partnership? Washington would not simply watch passively. The U.S. Indo-Pacific Command is the strongest forward-deployed military structure in the world, backed by alliances with Japan, Australia, South Korea, and Taiwan Korea, and increasingly the Philippines. American strategy would focus on choke points, especially the South China Sea and Strait of Malacca, to limit Chinese and Indian maritime coordination. Washington would deepen AUKUS, militarize the Quad without India, and accelerate military basing agreements across Southeast Asia. Economically, the U.S. would mobilize sanctions, export controls, and financial pressure. But this too has limits. Both China and India are central to global supply chains. Both are building alternatives to the dollar-based financial system through BRICS platforms. Punishing both at once would risk blowing back onto Western markets, energy flows, and tech ecosystems. Where the United States would still hold an edge is in soft power and technology. Silicon Valley, Hollywood, US universities, and the dominance of the dollar system shape global narratives and global ambition. Even if China and India aligned militarily, they would struggle to match America's cultural pull and alliance-building capacity. The US remains the only power with a global network of treaty allies, not just partners of convenience. However, this entire thought experiment slams into one immovable obstacle: trust. The history of Sino-Indian relations is scarred by war, standoffs, and geopolitical rivalry. India views China's Belt and Road projects as strategic encirclement, especially through Pakistan. China views India's ties with the US and its Indo-Pacific outreach as containment by another name. New Delhi will never accept junior partner status, and Beijing has no inclination to treat India as an equal strategic pole. Their geopolitical ambitions collide in the Himalayas, in the Indian Ocean, and across the diplomatic landscape of Asia. For India, a Chinese embrace feels like strategic suffocation. For China, true equality with India feels unnecessary. That fundamental asymmetry is why a formal defense pact remains improbable. Yet improbability doesn't negate importance. The mere possibility of cooperation, even limited cooperation, forces Washington to plan for a more multipolar Asia. The United States could likely contain a modest China-India convergence, but only at rising political, military, and economic cost. The era when US primacy could go unchallenged in Asia is already ending. Whether Beijing and New Delhi stand together or apart, Asia will no longer be shaped by one power balancing another, but by multiple centers of influence, colliding and coexisting. The real future is not a world of alliances, but a world of alignment. Fluid, interest-based, and transactional. China and India will occasionally compete, occasionally cooperate, and always hedge. The United States will struggle to contain Asia as a single bloc, because Asia no longer behaves like one. And yet, one truth remains. If China and India ever truly joined hands in the defense realm, the world would not merely shift, it would tilt. Not toward war, but toward a new global order, where no single superpower could dominate the world's most important continent.